Centre.
Ottawa South, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'm more than pleased to rise this evening to speak to this bill, Bill S-210, 210, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is a carbon copy of a bill which was originally numbered S-216, a bill brought by a Liberal member of the other place. And it was a bill that, frankly, should have been dealt with and expedited through this House and through these houses some time ago. And the reason why we're having to deal with a new version of the same bill is because the Prime Minister, in his wisdom, decided to prorogue the House of Commons for some month and a half, if not 2 months, in order to avoid scrutiny, avoid democratic scrutiny. And this is one of the unfortunate side effects of that decision, that this important bill has been bumped now months later. On the eve of the House rising, we get the government reintroducing a Liberal bill to amend a Liberal statute. Mr. Speaker, what this really does, as the member from Waterloo has just referred to, is it perfects, it improves and perfects what is the Federal Sustainable Development Act. That act was brought into being through the good work of a previous Liberal Member of Parliament who is no longer sitting here, but worked long and hard and feverishly before his departure from elected office to make sure that Canada had an overarching strategy on trying to make sure that as we grow our economy and we create employment opportunities and we create wealth, at the same time we stop a fundamental fiction. And the fundamental fiction is that the environment remains ancillary or outside or removed from the way in which we operate our economy. It's a view that I think this member understands ought to be perhaps better promoted in his government, but I don't believe it's a view that the Prime Minister particularly accepts. And the view that the environment and the economy now are completely linked, inextricably linked. Let's take a look, for example, as my colleague moments ago asked, around the G8 and G20 summits being held here in Canada this year. The Prime Minister resisted and resisted and resisted dealing with the climate change issue, just as he resisted attending the Copenhagen conference back in December, until he became the embarrassment of the international world when he was the only leader of the top 80, 90 countries not to be intending to show. And so he came to Copenhagen. I was there, the privilege to be there, to follow the negotiations closely, Speaker, and it was a remarkable phenomenon to watch the Prime Minister of Canada walking the halls with literally nothing to do. And in fact, when it came time to make a speech to the thousands of delegates who were there, it was the Minister of the Environment who spoke, not our head of state here, not the head of government, while President Obama and so many other Prime Ministers and Presidents spoke with great passion about how they were retooling their economies and their countries to in fact deal with this challenge of integrating the environment and the economy in a meaningful way. You know, even if we took the government's commitment at face value to deal with child and maternal health issues, which they're going only a certain distance in addressing, is it actually possible to address child and maternal health issues today on this planet without dealing with the climate change crisis? Well, my years in Africa on the ground, Mr. Speaker, working in development for UNICEF, taught me a long time ago that desertification in sub-Saharan Africa, water shortages, fresh water shortages, growing cycles being interrupted, environmental migration and what are now called environmental refugees, all these forces at play on women and children and maternal health ought to be, of course, addressed at a meeting that was serious at the G20 level that purports to address these issues. But you know, the Prime Minister doesn't really see sustainable development as I think the way to put it, Mr. Speaker, is this way. The Prime Minister doesn't see sustainable development or this need to show leadership on integrating the environment and the economy as a winning file. I think his Chief of Staff is telling him, I think his pollsters are telling him, I think his focus groups are telling him, because this is a man who lives by tactics. I think that this Prime Minister has decided that this is an area where he simply can't win. And so instead of showing the leadership the country desperately wants and I think needs and deserves, instead of doing that, he has sloughed off the issue and he wants it to be managed and contained to make sure that it doesn't grow into a brush fire for him. And that's what we're seeing here. This bill should have been dealt with 3 or 4 months ago. This law should have been passed, in our view, in the official opposition, and we should be working now to actually improve a national approach to integrating the environment and the economy. Because after all, Mr. Speaker, the question that we have now in this generation, and for generations to come, is a simple question, but an important one. Are we going to learn how to live within the carrying capacity of the planet or not? To pretend that the carrying capacity of the planet is limitless, whether it's through resource extraction, whether it's through putting greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, this ruse, this fiction is over. What science is telling us is that we have a finite period of time to deal with the carrying capacity challenge, and we speak of that in terms of climate change, for example, by talking about making sure that the planet's temperature does not increase by more than 2 degrees Celsius over the next 50 to 100 years. Now, the member who spoke on behalf of the government talked about a climate change target that the government has. Well, we accept that target at face value. They say it's 17% reductions from 2006 levels in the next 10 years. 2005 levels, excuse me, in the next 10 years. Well, if it's 17% reduction of greenhouse gases in the next 10 years or less, Mr. Speaker, where is the plan? Where is the roadmap? Where's the pathway to retool our economy to make sure that we can achieve that target? There's nothing. We've now had 55 months, or almost 55 months, of Conservative government. We've had 3 ministers of the environment. We've had over 10 public promises for greenhouse gas regulations, and we have no greenhouse gas regulations. We have no price on the right to emit carbon and greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, and as a result, people will continue, industries will continue to pretend that the atmosphere can continue to assimilate as much greenhouse gas as we can put into it. We know that cannot be the case, and we're falling behind. We're falling behind 27 European Union countries who already have a price on carbon emissions. We're falling behind the United States, where President Obama gave a keynote address last night to the nation speaking about the need to transform the United States' approach to its economic activities and its energy base. So because we have no plan, it's difficult to take the government in any way now, 54 months into its government, in any way seriously, Mr. Speaker, to talk about a sustainable development strategy, one that integrates meaningfully, as I said, the economy, environmental considerations, and our well-being. You know, the greatest mistake being made here by this regime, Mr. Speaker, is that we're losing out on opportunities like never before. The world is rushing to transform itself, jurisdiction by jurisdiction, country by country, city by city, province by province, to adopt clean technologies. Ontario, for example, recently announced that it was going to become the source of solutions for water and wastewater technologies for the entire planet. That's what Ontario has decided to do. You know, that's what we should be doing across this country. With some federal and national leadership, Canada is in a wonderful, wonderful place to be able to provide so many of the solutions, so much opportunity, so many jobs, so much wealth to be created, while at the same time improving the state of our natural environment, which is, of course, now just simply a necessity as we go forward. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to rise on behalf of the official opposition. We will be supporting this bill. It's an important bill that builds on the legacy of the work done by Liberal members and Liberal senators, and it's an idea whose time has come. Unfortunately, should have come some months ago. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Resuming debate.